we're joined now by CNN contributor and CNN's former Moscow bureau chief, Jill Dougherty. Jill, great to see you. So there was this rare show of unity in Congress. Top Republicans and Democrats joined together to call for Evan to be released. Does that tell us anything about what's happening behind the scenes?
I don't think it really does. I mean, obviously, it's good that the United States Congress is coming out, especially in a bipartisan way. But I think, it's Putin and his interests that you have to deal with. He is going to do a deal or not if he feels that it's in his interest. And right now, we really don't know. It's unclear exactly where we're going. I do think it was interesting, though, that Roger Carstens, who is the U.S. diplomat, who's the U.S. envoy for hostage affairs, did seem to indicate that now is kind of a moment of opportunity because, once the trial starts, it's very difficult to do a deal. So Carsten is saying you have to do it now, and that gives a little bit of hope.
Yeah, that was a glimmer of something. What is in it for Putin? What's in it for Putin to release Gershkovich?
He gets what he wants. And apparently what he wants, as Fred talked about, is this FSB assassin who is held in Germany. That appears to be what the deal would have been. So we don't know if there's anything else he wants. I'm sure he always wants more, but that seems to be it. And whether they can really strike a deal at this point is unclear.
And help me understand, why does Alexei Navalny's death scuttle that deal?
Well, you have to listen to what Putin's saying, and then do you believe it or don't you? I mean, Putin is saying, yes, we were kind of close to a deal, but then sadly, Alexei Navalny died because Navalny would have been part of that deal. But again, we don't know whether that is correct, that Putin actually did want to do a deal at that point. We know that there was some type of discussions, but whether they were formal or informal, I think it's a way of Putin saying, yes, I'm open, but it's very uncommittal because, of course, it never happened because Navalny died.
So, as you know, Evan's supporters have been planning all of these social media campaigns and doing them. I mean, we see in Times Square, there big, posters erected for Evan, for him to be released. People saying, I stand with Evan. There was a readathon that some of our own journalists took part in. All of this to keep his name in the news, top of mind. Does any of that register with Vladimir Putin, that kind of pressure?
Well, I think keeping Evan out there, being talked about, and is a very obvious issue right now really is important. Now, whether it sways Putin one way or the other, that's unclear. But I think that if people were not talking about him, then Putin would have less of a reason to do a deal. So Putin knows that he's very important. And, we have other Americans, sadly. Paul Whelan is there, Alsu Kurmasheva. They've been held for quite a while. Also, Mark Fogel. So it's important to keep their names out there. And it does provide some type of, worldwide pressure. Again, whether it affects Putin is not clear.
In the past, what has worked? What has ultimately worked with Putin? Just getting one of his guys back? Is that the only thing that moves the needle for him?
I think, as I said, getting what he wants. So getting one of his guys back could do it. Also, Putin wants to appear like sometimes a good guy. And so if he does something, he will do it because he thinks it's in his interest or he will look good. Right now, it appears that he wants to get back that guy. So that's what's in his interest. Whether there's another factor that might come into play, we kind of had that hint in that interview with Putin. But again, this is all very murky. And remember, the Russians are constantly saying, we don't want to talk about this in public. No discussion publicly. It should be private and secret because we want to talk behind the scenes. That's fine. But it remains a little murky what Putin's end goal is.
By design, of course. Jill Dougherty, thanks for helping us understand this.
Sure.